If you're buying a rental property in a rural area, you definitely can move forward and get approved for a DSCR loan. However, rural DSCR is kind of its own category. There's a few important things you need to know going in. The terms can look a little bit different, and the way lenders deem a property rural is not necessarily going to be uniform all across the board. In this video, we're going to cover everything you want to know before you ever order an appraisal to make sure that your deal is going to be airtight. Most lenders do not offer rural DSCR financing, and really the reason it's slightly complex and it's kind of its own category is a multitude of different factors. The best way to understand is think of a property that is in an HOA subdivision. Every property looks pretty similar to the next. Obviously, they're all pretty close to each other. That is the bank's dream because it's very easy to assess the property value of all these different homes. It's very easy to sell the property if you were to foreclose. When you're buying a rural property, if the next closest comp is 2 to 3, 4, 5 miles away, it's going to be a little bit harder for this property to sell in a lower population area. That property is just a little bit more unique than all the other properties in the area. So from the lender's eyes, it really comes down to assessing the property's value, having the ability to resell that property. And just in general, rural properties can have a little bit more complexity with the larger acreage. Oftentimes there's different kinds of outbuildings on these properties, and that's why it's not quite as simple as buying that property that's in that subdivision where every house looks very, very similar. So who actually determines if the property is rural or if it is not rural, or of course the alternative being residential? The short answer is it comes down to the appraiser in most cases. The appraiser has the ability to check a box for having the property be in a residential area or of course a rural area. Oftentimes I've had buyers that are purchasing a property and they thought it might be considered rural and it wasn't, and vice versa, with of course the opposite happening with it being deemed rural when the appraiser goes out to the property. So really hard to know going in. The biggest giveaway is going to be the overall acreage. How far away are the nearest properties from this house? If the nearest comp is several miles away, then most lenders are oftentimes going to consider it rural even if the appraiser doesn't. So the short answer, the appraiser is going to deem the property rural, or the lender will deem it rural even if the appraiser didn't. But if they think maybe it's a small population, if there's a lot of dirt roads in the community without having normal standard paved roads like most communities, and of course having the comps being several miles away, those are the biggest things that pop up and it can really deem that property rural in the eyes of the bank or the lender. So again, rural does not mean that your deal is completely dead. It just means you might have to find a different lender that's going to ultimately approve that file. Myself being a broker, I have a couple lenders I team up with that do have options for rural financing. Let's go over the guidelines and what exactly would be different for you as an investor going in. So of course, it's going to be a more limited amount of options you have, and those lenders' guidelines are going to be a little bit more strict for a rural property as opposed to residential. So right off the bat, you would need a 700 credit score. Anything south of that, you'd have to look at rehabbing your credit to get a little bit higher. The second component on the purchase side, you need a 25% down payment to, of course, acquire the property. Alternatively, if you already own the property, you're looking to do a cash out refinance, you'd be maxed out at 70% loan to value. Of course, having 30% equity left after that refinance is completed. And for DSCR ratio, you do need at least a 1 DSCR ratio. Again, I've done many videos on this channel that you can look into with 15% down or short-term rental, minimum down payment. Again, these niche programs cannot be combined and stacked with a rural DSCR loan. It's really its own kind of financing. So if you're looking to do the minimum down, if you have lower credit, just barely meeting the requirements, this is not going to be the best program for you. It's really for someone who has stronger credit, they have more cash and means, but of course they're running into issues with other lenders who do not have the same rural DSCR guidelines that we do. What I see happen very frequently with these loans is I'll have an investor come to me after already being turned down by a lender because it wasn't until that appraisal was ordered and came back that they found out they were going to be denied for that loan. So again, oftentimes you might try to move forward with just a standard lender who doesn't consider the property rural. Once you get that appraisal back, everyone knows that it is rural, you get turned down, and then that's when having this niche product really can be helpful. If you know that your property is already rural going in, you might as well get ahead of it. reach out to myself or a mortgage broker who you know does real DSCR financing to make sure that you're not going to have any delays with that transaction, right? It's never the most fun process to get turned down, have to switch lenders to make sure you can close on time to protect your earnest money deposit. So any questions that you guys have, if you're not sure if the property is rural, please shoot me a comment, shoot me a text, give me a call. Look forward to chatting through any scenarios you have. My name is Austin Clarence. I'm your DSCR loan expert.